Last time we talked about what urbanization is, why everyone's heading to the cities, and some of the problems those cities face when they get, really big.
Right, and we brought in those two examples, Bristol and Rio de Janeiro.
So let's dig a little deeper into those cities. What specific problems are they dealing with?
Okay, so Bristol, you'll remember, is facing issues with traffic, getting rid of all that waste, and finding affordable housing.
Yeah, you said they're trying to fix those things, right? Can we get into that a bit more? How are they trying to make Bristol more sustainable?
One of the big things they're doing is, well, they're focusing on sustainable transport, trying to make it, like, way more appealing than driving.
Okay, that makes sense with all the traffic problems we were talking about. So what does that look like? What are they actually doing?
They've put in something called the Metro bus. It's a rapid transit bus system, so it can get people around the city much faster. Like they've got dedicated bus lanes, priority at traffic lights, the whole shebang. It's all about making the bus a smoother, quicker experience.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of cities putting in those bike lanes too. Is that part of the plan in Bristol?
Absolutely. Encouraging people to, get on their bikes instead of driving is a big part of it. It's healthier, it's better for the environment. And more bike lanes just make it safer and easier to choose cycling.
Okay, so they're working on transport. What about all that garbage? I know we were saying they're running out of space in the landfills.
Yeah, that's an issue everywhere, not just Bristol. They're looking at all kinds of ways to manage waste. Reducing how much they produce in the first place and finding alternatives to just dumping everything in a landfill.
So like just recycling more. The whole reduce, reuse, recycle thing.
Exactly. They're pushing that big time. But they're also looking into some of those more high-tech solutions, like those waste-to-energy facilities we talked about.
Right, where they burn the waste to make electricity. Sounds efficient, but doesn't that cause air pollution? How do cities deal with that?
It's definitely something they have to consider. These facilities have to be designed really carefully with controls to keep the pollution down. They usually have special filters to like scrub the harmful stuff out of the emissions. It's a balancing act for sure.
Sounds like Bristol's really trying to walk the walk when it comes to being a more sustainable city.
They are, but it's a process. Even in a developed city like Bristol, there's always challenges.
Now let's switch gears. Back to Rio. We said before that Rio's challenges are magnified because everything's urbanizing so rapidly, leading to those problems with housing, poverty, crime. Can we look at some specific examples of how these things are actually playing out? Yeah, definitely. Let's start with those favelas. They're like a really clear picture of that housing crisis in Rio.
Right. You've got Rocinha, for example. That's the largest favela in Brazil. It's home to like hundreds of thousands of people. And, well, like many favelas, it's overcrowded. There's not enough basic services, and people often don't even really own the land their homes are built
That
on.
must be, so tough living like that, especially with the threat of crime, too.
It is. And unfortunately, those conditions make it much easier for diseases to spread. And if there's a natural disaster like a flood or a landslide, the impact on favelas can be, well, devastating.
So are they doing anything to, help the people living in those areas? Are things getting better?
There have been a few different attempts. Some are focused on just providing the basics like running water, sanitation, electricity.
Which must make a huge difference for the people living there.
A huge difference. But there are also programs to like upgrade the houses themselves, make them safer, stronger. Some involve giving residents the materials and training so they can fix up their own homes. Others are building new housing, more durable units right within the favelas.
That sounds, those improvements would be life-changing for people.
They really can be, but it's important to realize these projects often run into obstacles, things like not enough funding, all the bureaucratic stuff, and sometimes even resistance from the residents. They're wary of people coming in and changing things.
I can understand that. They want to be involved, not just, have someone come in and tell them what to do.
Exactly. Any attempt to improve these areas, it has to involve the people living there. Respect what they need and what's important to them.
Yeah.
It has to be a collaboration.
Okay, so that's the housing situation. What about the poverty and crime issues? How are those playing out in Rio specifically?
Well, poverty, it pushes people into that informal economy, right? Where
Mm.
jobs aren't regulated. It's dangerous and the pay is terrible. It's a vicious cycle, really hard to break out of.
It's just awful.
It is. And that poverty, unfortunately, it can lead to crime. In Rio, a lot of the crime is in those poorer areas, those favelas. That's where the gangs are often in control. It creates a climate of fear, makes it so much harder for people to, improve their lives.
Yeah, it's like this domino effect.
Mm,
Poverty leads to crime, and then the crime just keeps people stuck in poverty. It's hard to escape.
you're right. It's a whole mess of interconnected problems. And we need to remember that crime isn't, always a choice. It's
Yeah.
often driven by deeper things going on, like the whole social and economic situation.
So what are some of the things that actually, cause crime in a city like Rio?
Well, you've got poverty, like we talked about, but there's also inequality, people being excluded from things, a lack of trust in the police. When people feel like they're on the outside and that there's no hope, they're more likely to turn to crime.
So it's not about excusing crime, it's about trying to understand why it's happening.
Exactly. It's about finding solutions that address those root causes. Like they're doing things in Rio to create jobs for young people, give them something else to do so they don't get involved with gangs. And there are programs to, make community policing better, build trust between the police and the people who live there.
So it's about like attacking the problem from all sides.
Absolutely. And it's not just about what the government does. Those community groups and nonprofits are really important. They have those education programs, job training, and just support services for people who need it. They also work on conflict resolution and violence prevention.
So it's the government, the community organizations, and the people who live there all working together.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that even with all these big scary problems, there are people who are working hard to make things better. We've talked a lot about the problems, but we can learn a lot from these challenges.
Yeah. And in the last part, we're going to focus on solutions, right? The things people are doing all over the world to manage these challenges and build a better future.